Yo, what's up, YouTube? I hope you're ready to have your brain melted, because this is going to be a very long video. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know when setting up audio for your computer on Windows. So, with that being said, let's jump right into it. I want to remind you that we offer free help in my Discord server. Link is in the description below. So if you have any further questions about anything in this video, feel free to reach out to me or my medical ninja there to help you with this very technical stuff, because it's a lot and I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of questions, and I'm excited for those questions. But really, we have a lot of really smart people, really helpful people in there, and they're more than happy to help you out. But keep in mind, if you're one of those people that join the Discord server and, get helpful and free content from me or my community and don't hit that subscribe button, you can leave this video right now. Totally kidding. I love doing this, guys. I appreciate it. Do consider hitting that subscribe button, because this is a lot of content and it's packed full of just useful information that you will not find anywhere else on YouTube. So what we're going to do in this video, guys, is I'm going to show you how to set up a Voicemeeter Potato. Voicemeeter Potato is a virtual audio mixer. It's how we distribute all of our audio on our computer. If we don't have what is called an analog mixer or an XLR mixer or an audio interface to distribute our audio on our computer. We're also going to set up Equalizer APO. Equalizer APO is what we use to process the audio on our microphone. You can also use it to process other audio drivers or other audio sources on your computer if you'd like to, but we use it only for our microphone. And then last but not least, if you're a content creator and you use OBS for video recording, or you use it for live streaming on Twitch or YouTube, I'm going to show you how to set up your audio professionally for streaming using advanced filters in OBS, but also the appropriate filters that you need to be using and how to set them up will be covered as well when we set up Equalizer APO. So this is going to be a really in-depth video. I'm not going to leave out anything. Let's get into it. Ooh, I almost forgot to mention, I do want you guys to also check out my Patreon page. Link is in the description below. I have only a few tiers set up. The first tier is like $3 per month. I'm just looking for just a little bit of funding to continue to grow the content that I'm creating. So if you're interested in being a pledger, go check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. Alright, so the first thing we're going to set up in this video is what is called Voicemeeter Potato. Voicemeeter Potato is a program developed by VB-Audio Software. VB-Audio Software has a plethora of virtual audio devices that work on your computer that are extremely useful, including the following: Voicemeeter Banana, Voicemeeter Potato, the V-band network, the virtual audio cable, and what is called Spectralissime is a source that is a program that you can use to monitor frequencies from a specific source. It allows you to get more in-depth analysis of like what the audio waveform of your vocals are, so on and so forth. What we're setting up is Voicemeeter Potato. The Voicemeeter Potato is a virtual audio mixer. What that means is it's very much like an analog mixer that you see in studios when people are recording music, or in any place that uses XLR, cables, audio cables, or anything like that. It is a virtual mixer. It's a virtual version of an analog mixer. It gives you the ability to distribute audio on your computer any way that you would like to, and it's extremely useful. Before jumping into the setup of Voicemeeter Potato, there are a few things that I want to cover. As I said, this is an extremely in-depth tutorial of all audio that you need. What we're going to run into is 3 different types of audio drivers. The first one is going to be WDM. WDM stands for Windows Driver Model. Windows driver model is going to have the lowest latency for those of you that are using Windows devices. The Windows driver model actually makes use of the kernel streaming, which is the KS audio driver or kernel streaming components, which operate in kernel mode and are part of the operating system. Kernel streaming refers to the Microsoft provided services that support kernel mode processing of streamed data. The class drivers are implemented as expert drivers in the system files. MME is a Microsoft multimedia environment. It is a native to Windows audio driver. In fact, it was the first audio driver released in Windows 3.1. And last but not least, we have the ASIO audio drivers on Windows, according to Ableton.com. If you don't know what Ableton is, it is the industry standard for audio production for studios when it comes to creating music. ASIO is a professional level audio driver for Windows. ASIO usually allows you to set lower buffering sizes. ASIO performance is generally much better. ASIO is actually what runs the virtual inputs and virtual outputs, as well as the virtual cables with Voicemeeter, and that's what we are going to use for setting up our audio on our computer. All right, I wanted to cover those audio drivers before we jump into how to set up Voicemeeter Potato, because I'm going to crop out the how to set up Voicemeeter Potato portion of my how to set up Voicemeeter Potato video into this video, because there's literally no reason for me to remake that. And then I'm going to resume the video after Voicemeeter Potato is set up, and we're going to dive into Equalizer APO. So if you have Voicemeeter Potato set up already, you can use this timestamp here or in the description below and skip past Voicemeeter Potato setup. But if you don't have it set up yet, make sure you follow the steps in the next portion of this video. Open up that Voicemeeter Potato. This is exactly what it will look like. I actually have some stuff set up on it already, but don't let that confuse you. There's a lot of hardware inputs, a lot of virtual inputs. We will cover all of that. But first and foremost, I want you to go over to the menu and toggle two things: auto restart audio engine and system tray run at startup. A lot of you in my comments have complained about having to go and open Voicemeeter every time you open your computer. All you need to do is toggle this right here, the system tray run at startup, and it will start every time you start your computer. All right, first and foremost, I want to go over the basics of the program. On the left here, we have hardware input 1 through 5. These are our hardware inputs. These are actual hardware that we have on our computer. For example, microphones. In the middle, we have our virtual inputs. This is a very useful tool that Voicemeeter offers us. On the bottom right, we have our master section. On the left side of the master section, we have A1 through A5. These are going to be our physical outputs or hardware outputs. And on the right side, we have B1 through B3. These are going to be our virtual outputs, another tool that Voicemeeter offers us. Also, up at the top, we have our hardware outputs, A1 through A5. These are the same exact thing as the physical outputs in the master section, except for this is where you select the actual the hardware that you're going to use. So the first thing we set up on this program is the microphone. Keep in mind, guys, we're not actually going to be running our microphone through Voicemeeter. The reason I left this portion of the video in this video is because there's some stuff I mentioned that is useful and would be useful information for you about Voicemeeter, but we're not actually using Voicemeeter to process our microphone audio, so don't set up your microphone in Voicemeeter. We're going to be using Equalizer APO for the processing of your microphone's audio. Now, the microphone is going to be ran through one of the hardware inputs. What I suggest doing is running your microphone through hardware input 1. So if you left click on this hardware input, it'll come up with a drop down. What you need to do is select the microphone that you use. What you'll notice is on the left here, you have WDM, KS, MMA. These are different audio drivers running your microphone. If you notice that you have like a robot sounding voice or some weird latency thing going on, what you can do is select a different audio driver and it might fix that issue. Directly below the microphone itself, you have the IntelliPan. This is where you can edit the EQ of that microphone. On the left, you have lows. On the right, you have mids. And up towards the middle bottom half of this box, you have highs, and above that you have a little bit of an echo or brightness to that voice. If you right click on this panel, you have a modulation panel. This is going to be something similar to voice mod. It's a modulation for your voice, so it adds things like reverb, so on and so forth. So what you can do is drag this around and kind of add cool effects to your voice. Now, if you right click again, what you have is the 3D panel. This is going to change the position of the audio coming from this device, so you can set your mic sounding like it's coming from the far left or far right, so on and so forth. We're not going to make any adjustments to this. What most people do if they're running the processing on their microphone through Voicemeeter is they set their color panel to right around that area. But what I suggest using is a program like Equalizer APO to do the processing on your microphone. Below the IntelliPan, we have the Audibility tab. This is going to be where we have the compression on the left. This is an auto gain compression. I highly suggest not use it because it's basically just a volume booster at this point. On the right side here, we have a noise gate filter. Below that, we have the special effects and the external effects on Voicemeeter Potato. All of that stuff can be edited over here in the special effects and external effects panel next to the recording tab. And below that, you have the actual audio meter and the gain fader, the fader gain that you can adjust the audio levels on. I want to point out on Voicemeeter Potato, if you click in this meter here and drag down, if you left click and drag down, it has a limiter filter as well. This is basically the opposite of a noise gate filter. It limits the level of audio, so I have it set to -5 decibels currently. My microphone audio is not exceeding that -5 decibels. If I drag it down, it's blocking that audio at -28, so on and so forth. All right, so the next thing we're going to set up is the hardware input 2. If you left clicked on this drop down here, what we're going to select is the virtual audio cable. Now keep in mind, what you want to look for is what is contained within the parentheses here, the VB-audio virtual cable. What is contained outside of the parentheses is what is called the Windows label for that driver. Sometimes the Windows label gets jacked up, so it might say cable output, it might say Voicemeeter output, it might say output cable. But what you need to focus on is what's contained within the parentheses, VB-audio virtual cable. Alright, so what we're going to do is take our browser audio, all of our browser audio, and send it to the virtual audio cable. The way we're going to do that is in advanced settings on Windows 10. So if we go to our sounds down here, right click it and go to open sound settings, scroll down and go to app volume and device preferences. Make sure you have audio playing on the browser that you use. You most likely use Google Chrome or Chromium. I personally use Opera GX, which I highly suggest getting if you don't have it. And if you have audio traveling through that browser, what will happen is it'll pop up in these devices down here on this list. What we're going to do is set the output of that device to the virtual audio cable. So under the output section, we're going to toggle that drop down for the device, and we're going to select the VB-audio virtual cable. What we're doing is telling Windows 10 to send all audio from that browser to the virtual input on Voicemeeter that we set to our hardware input 2. Now, as you can tell, I actually have audio coming through my browser currently, and what you see in the meter down here is audio coming through on this hardware input 2. So what we're doing is sending this browser audio to Voicemeeter, and then we're going to send it to our hardware outputs A1 or A2 so that we can hear it. Now, what we're going to do is the same exact thing for our music applications. So if you use Spotify, I use a Google Player, a Google Play desktop player. So going back to the advanced sound settings, make sure you have audio traveling through Spotify or whatever music application that you use. We're actually going to set our music to the virtual input 3, the Voicemeeter VIO 3. So hit the drop down on that music player, and in the parentheses, what you should see is VB-audio Voicemeeter VIO 3, the VIO 3 input. So toggle that for the output of your music devices. Now keep in mind, you might have to go into the actual settings on that application and set the output device to the Voicemeeter VIO 3 input. All right, so next up, what we're going to do is set our hardware outputs. These are actual outputs that you have on your computer, actual hardware. What I have set up on my A1 is my headphones, because I like to have my audio traveling to my headphones as the priority. And on A2, I have my speakers. Now, what you can do is toggle the browser audio that we set up earlier. Make sure you send it to A1, your headphones, and just make sure that audio is coming through your browser and being sent to your headphones through Voicemeeter. Make sure you do that real quick, and do the same exact test with the music that we just set up using the advanced sound settings. Now, the reason I have A1 for my headphones and A2 for my speakers is because I like to be able to switch between the two very easily. So if I want to listen to my music on my speakers and my headphones, I can send it both to A1 and A2. Same with every hardware input and virtual input. So you might consider doing the same setup. This might be a good time to mention, guys, if you are struggling with the setup of Voicemeeter Potato or Voicemeeter Banana, we offer free help when it comes to setting this stuff up. Also, if you're interested in helping people set this stuff up, guys, feel free to let me know in my Discord server. We need plenty of people that understand Voicemeeter and are just willing to help people out. Also, guys, if you like content like this and you like free stuff, I give away a bunch of free stuff when it comes to design, animation, all kinds of cool stuff like that. So feel free, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to know when I release my next videos. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is move on to the rest of our virtual inputs. The last two we have are the virtual input 1 and virtual input 2. The virtual input 1 is what we're going to set for our desktop audio, and the virtual input 2 is what we're going to set for our communication devices like Discord or TeamSpeak. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you toggle the hardware output that you want to listen to both your desktop and communication device on. So go ahead and do that first. I also want to point out that under each one of these virtual inputs on the sound meters here, you have the same limiter function. I actually use the limiter on the communication device because it's hard to manage with OBS, and Discord is the sound leveling system is just kind of poor. All right, so what we're going to do is go to our playback devices. What we need to do is set our Voicemeeter input VB-audio Voicemeeter VAIO to our default device, and then what we're going to do is set our VB-audio Voicemeeter aux VAIO to our default communications device. So the Voicemeeter input's going to be our virtual input 1, which I have labeled here as desktop audio, and the virtual input 2 that we're setting to our default communications device is what we set to our communications audio on Voicemeeter. If you aren't using Voicemeeter for the processing on your microphone, what you're going to do is set the default device to your microphone device. Mine's VoiceMod, so make sure you understand that. Then what you need to do is open up Discord and set both the input device and output device to default device and make sure that it's running properly. Give it a nice sound check and make sure that it's running properly. The output of this device should go to your Voicemeeter aux input on Voicemeeter, and the input should be either your microphone or the Voicemeeter aux output from Voicemeeter. All right, and just to quickly rehash everything that was mentioned in this video so far so you don't get all jumbled and confused. What we did is set our microphone to our hardware input 1, and then we're sending that microphone to B2, which is our virtual output Voicemeeter aux output. Now keep in mind the labels for these. B1 is your Voicemeeter VAIO output, B2 is your Voicemeeter aux output, and B3 is your Voicemeeter VAIO 3 output. What we did is set our hardware input 2 to our virtual audio cable, which in our advanced settings we sent the browser audio to our virtual audio cable, and then we are sending that to our hardware outputs so that we can listen to it ourselves. In our virtual inputs, we set our default playback device to Voicemeeter VAIO, so that is our desktop audio, which is the virtual input 1. We set the default communication device to Voicemeeter aux input, which is the virtual input 2, our communications. And then in advanced settings, we sent our music application audio to Voicemeeter VAIO 3, which is our virtual input 3. We are then sending all of that audio to A1 and or A2 or A3 or A4 or A5 to our hardware outputs so that we can listen to all of these devices. Now, the reason we're separating all of this audio is so that 1, you can understand Voicemeeter better, and 2, it actually gives you more audio control for what you're hearing. And if you're a streamer like myself, the audio that your stream is hearing can be managed to the exact decibel that you want them to hear it at. If you guys had any issues with getting the advanced audio settings, so the apps, volumes, and preferences, working for like Spotify or your browser, there is a workaround for that. It's called Ear Trumpet. That is the program you can use to gain control of those audio sources. The link for that is in the description below. When you've downloaded Equalizer APO, you'll find it in the C drive, Program Files, Equalizer APO. What you need to do is go to the configuration file and make sure you drop that new snowball preset txt file in this configuration file. This is how we load it into Equalizer APO. Once you've got that dropped into the config file, what you can do is hit that Windows button, scroll down, go and find Equalizer APO 1.2.1 and open the configuration editor. Actually, I'm sorry, the configurator. Once you have the configurator open, it'll look something like this. You need to go to Capture Devices and select the microphone device that you're using, and then go ahead and configure it there. Next, go back to the Windows tab, go down to Equalizer APO and open the configuration editor, and it'll look something like this. It comes up with this message every time: APO not installed to device. Just exit out of it. There's no need to worry about it. What you're going to see is this config setup here. There's not going to be anything here, and I'll show you what you need to set up. What you need to do is hit this little plus button, go to Control and Device. What you'll do is hit the change on selected devices, hit the toggle select all devices, and click the microphone that you're using, and then hit OK. Next, you're going to hit the plus button again. We're going to go to Control, and then we're going to go to Include. We're going to hit this little blue folder button. This is the Open button, and we're going to open the file, new snowball preset txt file, and go ahead and open that up. Make sure the Include file is below the device itself. Otherwise, it won't include the preset onto the device. So make sure the preset is below the device itself. All right, so once you've got that set up, what you'll need to do is hit this little open button up here and go ahead and open the new snowball preset file. It'll come up with a new tab here that says new snowball preset txt. This is going to be all the VST plugins that are installed on this txt file onto this microphone. So these are the plugins that we are using for the processing on our microphone. Now, these will not pop up unless you have the VST plugins downloaded, so make sure you have those VST plugins downloaded. So on Equalizer APO, we have a combination of 5 filters. It's important to note that the process priority is based on the numbers located here on the left. So your Equalizer APO, your Windows is going to process this VST plugin first, and then respectively each number after that. So the reason we have them set up in this order is for the process priority. The first thing we have set up is this basic EQ. This EQ includes a high pass and a low pass that knocks off plosives and airy noises that we don't need picked up from our microphone. This next one here is an expander. The following one is what is called a noise gate filter. The following one is a compression filter. And last but not least, we have another EQ filter with several different bands, and we'll dive into more detail on each one of these filters. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the noise gate filter. I feel like it's the most easiest one to explain so you get a grasp of how these how these things work, and then we can dive into the expander and compression and so on and so forth. So the noise gate, sometimes also known as an audio gate, works on some basic controls known as the threshold, which is here on the left, the attack, which you can see under the envelope section here, which we set right here, and the release. The threshold is the audio level that we set, where if the audio signal drops below that threshold level, then the gate will close and the signal is muted, meaning all of the audio below negative 57 decibels will be muted and won't be heard on stream. The attack time is for once that audio or that signal rises above the threshold, the gate will open up. The attack time just sets how long it takes for that gate to fully open. So it has a bit of a fading effect with the audio. What we have it set to is 15 milliseconds for that gate to open once your audio signal exceeds negative 57 decibels. All right, and the hold, this is the time that the gate stays open once the audio signal has dropped below the threshold level. This helps to stop the natural decay of a sound from being cut off too early by the gate itself closing. This combined with the release time prevents the noise gate from affecting the sound negatively once the threshold level has been reached. And lastly, the release time is the amount of time it takes the gate to change from open to fully close once the signal has fallen below the threshold. This is what makes that gradually fading effect versus the audio just being cut off as soon as the signal reaches that threshold level. All right, before we continue, we need to discuss what dynamic range is. Dynamic range is the difference between the quietest and loudest volumes of your vocals or any of the audio that's being played on your computer, really just any audio in general. When referring to dynamic range, we're talking about the distance between the loudest and quietest parts of any audio excerpt or any audio piece. All right, we're ready to move on to the expansion filter or the expander. The expander works very similarly to a noise gate filter, only in the fact that it has similar functions as far as the threshold, the attack time, and the release time, but it does not do the same thing as a noise gate. Don't get me wrong here. Now, what an expander will do is allow some signal or audio signal to travel through once the audio levels drop below the threshold. What it's going to do is expand the dynamic range in your voice once the threshold is hit. So what we have set is negative 40 decibels as our threshold. Once the audio signal goes below negative 40 decibels, it's going to expand the dynamic range of our vocals between the quietest part and the loudest part. Instead of squashing the dynamic range like a compressor would, the expander expands the dynamic range. All right, now we're ready to move into compression. Compression is actually a fairly popular topic right now. Again, the threshold is just setting the signal level at which the compressor begins to compress audio. So we have ours set to negative 32 decibels is where it will start compressing audio. Now, the ratio is where a lot of people get things confused. Our ratio is actually set to 1.6 to 1. A lot of people say that you can only do a 4-to-1 ratio, or you can only do a 3-to-1 ratio. That's actually false. Using different combinations of knee size with RMS size and threshold, you can really do whatever ratio you want to produce the certain sound that you're trying to achieve. The ratio that we have set up is a 1.6 to 1. It's definitely going to create a different effect. It's not going to compress as much as a 4-to-1 ratio would, but it adds a really nice effect to the audio. If you want to go ahead and try setting it to 4:1 instead of 1.6 and listen to what that sounds like, the difference, that's up to you. You do as you please. But what we have done is set 1.6 to 1. So for example, every 1.6 decibels of signal level over the threshold will be compressed to deliver only 1 decibel of signal level increased at the output stage. So that might be a bit confusing, but I will try and make it make more sense. For every 1.6 decibels exceeding the threshold, only 1 decibel will be output. So if we exceed the threshold by 1.6 decibels, then 1 decibel will come. So 1 decibel will be in its place per se. So if we exceeded by 3.2 decibels, then 2 decibels would come out of the threshold. So if we exceeded the -32 by 3.2 decibels, so our vocals hit a -35.2 decibels, then what will happen is our audio level would be compressed down to -34 decibels. And again, you know, the attack time is the amount of time it takes for the compression to be applied to the audio signal once the audio has exceeded that threshold. And then again as well, the release is the amount of time it takes for that the compression to be released or fully closed off for when that audio signal hits the threshold again. All right, now we're ready to move on to these the equalizer, the EQ. EQ is short for equalizer. Equalization is the process of adjusting the balance between frequency components within an electronic signal. EQ allows you to do tonal shaping. This allows you to carve or sculpt certain audio waveforms in your vocals. In sound design and music production, EQ gives you the ability to cut or boost certain frequencies to achieve the right tonal balance in your voice. That's what we're trying to achieve, is the appropriate tonal balance for you as an individual, which it can be extremely difficult to achieve, especially in a video format. It's important that you follow this very carefully. Now, in a sense, EQ is a enhancement tool or a corrective tool. You can target specific frequency ranges. For instance, a humming noise in the background like a heater or a fan. You can target those specific frequency ranges and cut them out of the end product so people don't hear that coming out of your microphone. So humming noises, you can try and eliminate things like mouse noises or keyboard noises, but keep in mind, adjusting the EQ around those frequency ranges might affect the way your vocals are coming across. It depends on where your vocals lie or how your voice is being received. It depends on the frequency range of your vocals. All right, we're going to talk about very important frequency ranges to make note of. Keep in mind the ranges within these vary depending on your age, your gender, also like the depth of your voice. If you're an alto, a tenor, a falsetto, if you're screaming or whispering, so on and so forth. We're going to start with the low frequencies first and go to the higher frequencies. On the low end, from 20 to 80 hertz, you're looking at a low end rumble. This is usually sounds that you don't want coming through your microphone as when you're speaking. This is like the rumbling, like actual rumbling noise that you would get from like sub bass in your vehicle. So very low end sounds. Fundamental vocal frequencies are going to come in at 100 to 300 hertz. This is the fundamental range of your voice. Too much of this can lead to what is called boominess. Some people say muddiness a lot as well. And then too little of this really thins out your voice. It makes it difficult to, it takes away the fullness of your voice. Now from 350 hertz to 800 hertz is going to be the box region. This is where your vocals are boxy and hollow. You need to balance this area very carefully. From 1000 to 4000 hertz is going to be the mid-range, the nasally / honky sounds. The next zone is going to be what is usually referred to as the sibilance zone, from 5 to 8k hertz. A lot of us, we really refer to this area as the S sound. We try and eliminate the S sound or the sibilance as much as possible, but without destroying the voice. And then lastly, the air region, which is going to be 10 to 20k hertz. All right, so what we have set up for our EQ is, starting with the 8th band, we have a low shelf type. That is the type of waveform on this EQ. That is the shape of that waveform there. At 75 hertz, we've decreased it by 3.5 decibels. And we're just trying to eliminate some of that low end rumbly noise, but we're not completely removing it. We remove entirely the unnecessary sounds in this range in the first EQ that we're not looking at currently. We'll talk about in a second. Next up, we have the 7th and 2nd band. The 7th band is right at that 124 hertz. It's really 125 hertz. It is increased by 2 decibels. So this is really this is the main vocal range of our voice here, from 100 to 300 hertz. So we've added some boost in this range to our main vocals to bring out that fullness in our voice. Keep in mind, you don't want to boost this too much because it will cause what is called boominess or muddiness in your vocals. The 3rd band, our 3rd band here, is within that boxy region, actually just a hair past that boxy region, getting into the nasally / honky region. We're trying to kind of eliminate a little bit of boxiness and nasaliness, trying to balance our vocals a bit. And our next band is actually smack dab, almost in the middle of that nasal / honky range, and we're actually applying a bit of a boost here to bring a presence to our voice. The 5th band here is in that sibilant zone, trying to eliminate a little bit of that S sound so it doesn't hurt the ears so much, because that sound can be very sharp on the ears. You really want to use this with a decently tight Q or bandwidth, so that you get better control over the brightness of your voice. And then the last band here, the 4th band, is in that air region, and this is to bring presence, to bring airiness to the vocals. It adds a nice creative effect to the vocals. And last but not least, our first EQ here, which I mentioned a little bit above. What we've done here on this first band is a high pass. It's set at 30 hertz, and what we're doing is eliminating those really low end rumbly sounds that we don't need coming through our mic. And then the second band is set to 1700 hertz, and it is a low pass, which is the opposite of a high pass, and that is to eliminate unneeded or unnecessary airy sounds in our vocals. I know that was quite a lot of information that I just threw at you guys, but that is about the most in-depth thing you'll find on YouTube for setting up your EQ, compression, expander, and noise gate filters for your microphone. You can apply this same logic to any audio interface that you have or any analog mixer, because the logic stays the same. The frequency ranges are the same with any audio mixer. It's just because we use Equalizer APO doesn't mean that you can't apply this same logic to a different, an audio interface or something like that. So keep that in mind as well. You finally made it through the second portion of this video, which is setting up Equalizer APO. So what we have now is the virtual audio mixer on our computer setup, the processing on our microphone setup. The last thing we need to do is set up everything in OBS. So let's dive into it. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna do on OBS is go to our settings. We want to go to audio, and we want to change our sample rate from 44.1 to 48K hertz, and make sure that channel is on stereo. Now, we also want to disable the devices that are listed here. The reason that is because we are going to enable or create our own audio capture sources in the sources of OBS. So go ahead and disable each one of these. The reason this is important is because it's going to give you more control over your audio sources. I know it's a little bit weird, but trust me on this. This is exactly what you want to be doing. Now, what you see in my sources down here, which by the way, you might notice that my audio mixer is vertical. If you right click in this black space, you can toggle a vertical layout. And then stats and all that stuff can be found in the view and the docs. So keep that in mind. If you go to view and docs, you can set up all the stuff that you want to be shown down here. The statistics is actually a very useful thing. So, you know, like skipped frames and rendering lag and all that stuff. But anyways, what you'll notice in my sources here is I have a drop down for audio captures. It's a group that I have labeled audio captures. What I have set up is music audio, desktop audio, communication audio, Opera GX audio or browser audio, and then my microphone audio. So what I have done is, if you hit this plus on the sources, go to audio input capture device, what you'll do is set up two audio input capture devices. One is going to be your microphone, which you're going to set up as your microphone device. I use Voicemod, so that's why it's set up as Voicemod virtual audio device. Yours will probably just say your microphone, so make sure you have that as well. And then the other one's going to be that browser, so make sure you set that to the virtual audio cable. Next, we're going to set up three audio output capture devices. One's going to be communication audio, one's going to be desktop audio, and the other's going to be music audio. Go ahead and set up three audio output capture devices. The desktop audio is going to be our Voicemeeter input BB audio Voicemeeter VIO. Our communication audio is going to be Voicemeeter aux input BB-audio Voicemeeter aux VIO. And then lastly, our music audio is going to be our VB-audio Voicemeeter VIO 3. Now, what I suggest doing is making these all one group so you don't have to copy and paste each one of these audio input and outputs into each one of your scenes. So if you right click, you can add and create a group. Name the group whatever you want to name it, and then drag and drop each one of these audio sources into the audio capture devices. And what you can do is right click and copy and paste these audio capture devices in each one of your scenes. So make sure you do that so you have audio on each scene, because you disabled audio. You disabled all your audio sources, so you need to make sure that all of your audio capture devices are on each one of your scenes. Now keep in mind, if you don't want a specific audio source on a specific scene, you can make that adjustment, but you'll have to separate the group first. Otherwise, it will edit the group in other groups. That makes sense. Now, the reason we're separating all this, as you can tell on my audio mixer, what we have now is the communication audio, desktop audio, my microphone, which you can see the meter moving up and down for my vocals coming in, music audio, and Opera GX. Now, what we've done is separated each one of those audio sources into OBS so that we can control the levels of volume for each one of these independently, making it sound perfect on stream. Now, the first thing we're going to start with is the music audio. If you right click the music audio and go to filters, you can add audio filters. What I've added here is a gain filter. 2 compress filters. I've just changed the second one to sidechain. You'll have to label it. I would label it sidechain. A volume adjustment, which is another gain filter. I've named it volume, and then a limiter. The gain is going to be a volume adjustment. Now for music audio, you want your music audio for copyright reasons to be background music, but not only that, but for overall viewer experience reasons, you want the music to be background music. You've been in streams before where the audio from music is just blasting and it's extremely difficult to hear the streamer themselves or the game audio. What we're going to do is make it to where that music audio never exceeds a certain volume level. And so the way we're going to do that is through these filters. The first filter we set up is a gain filter. This is basically just a volume adjustment. What I've done is adjusted it -12 decibels. You're probably going to do a mixture of things that are a bit differently, so just bear with me here. What I've done as well is set up a slight compression. I do suggest doing the same exact compression that I have here. Set the threshold to -35, the attack and release time the same, and then also the ratio is the same. Go ahead and compress the audio the same way. Same with the side chain. Now the side chain it's a certain type of compression. As you can see down here, the side chain / ducking source. What we're doing here is compressing the audio. So we're compressing the music audio based on the audio input from the microphone. So go ahead and set up the sidechain filter exactly the same as I have it as well. Again, the volume adjustment is just an additional gain filter to adjust volume levels. The reason I have 2 of them is because on this second one is what I do to make other adjustments just in case I want to, make changes to the volume level. And then last but not least, the limiter. This is a new filter that we haven't discussed yet tonight. The limiter is very easy to understand. So what we're doing with a limiter is setting a level that the the audio signal cannot exceed. So by setting the threshold to -27 decibels, the music audio for me will never exceed -27 decibels. So that is the threshold of the limiter. It sets a limit on that audio. The release time is how slowly the limiter releases as the music comes back to that threshold. So your music audio will exceed -27 decibels. As it comes back down below -27 decibels, it will be 60 milliseconds of a release time from going below that threshold, if that makes sense. And to quickly summarize the sidechain filter, so when I speak into my microphone, it will compress the music audio based on these settings here. So what will happen is a slight decrease in volume. This just brings up clarity in your voice, and it's something that you don't really notice unless you're really listening to it. But it is also something that brings an extremely professional sound to your stream. It also is something that is extremely important for making your vocals the priority over other things. There are certain streams that you probably have noticed as you're listening to them. You don't know why they sound really good and you enjoy listening to it, but they just do. And this is a big reason for that, is because their vocals remain the priority of all the audio on the stream. So I highly suggest using a sidechain filter, and you can adjust the ratio and threshold to your liking. But what this will do is apply just about 5 decibel audio decrease, and it will be so slight you won't even really notice it. So when you speak into your mic, the audio from your music will be decreased ever so slightly. Music audio more so will be decreased by like a couple decibels, but like other audio sources, we'll get into that in a second here. All right, so the next thing we're gonna look at is our desktop audio. Again, I've applied a gain filter if I need to make adjustments to the audio volume level. I don't have actually any adjustments there. The limiter, again, the limiter is setting the limit on the audio. you want this desktop audio to be a little bit louder. This is going to be like your video games and stuff like that. I have my threshold set to -14 decibels, and as you can see, my microphone's hitting right around 10 decibels, so -14 is just a little bit quieter than my microphone. Make sure it is in fact quieter than the microphone itself. And then again, guys, we are applying compression to that desktop audio. Feel free to copy these compression filters, these compression settings, and then the side chain. Again, we're going to side chain this against the microphone. These are the same side chain filters as the music audio, except for the threshold is just a bit different. This side chain will apply just about a 5 decibel difference depending on how loud you are in your microphone. So this is a beautiful set of filters for your desktop audio. And then we're going to dive into the communication audio. Communication audio, I've only applied a gain filter, so I decreased the volume by 1.9 decibels, and then I set a limiter of -17.5 decibels. Again, I want the communication audio to be louder than, music audio, and almost as loud as desktop audio. I want my viewers to be able to hear people that I'm communicating with on Discord or TeamSpeak or these applications, but I don't want them to be overpowering. So I want to make sure that I limit their audio, because it can be very difficult to control the audio levels of people that you're communicating with in Discord. I'm sure you guys experienced this, so make sure you set a limit that you're comfortable with for your communication audio. And then next, the filters on our browser source. We want to have, again, a gain filter. I've decreased this audio by -10 decibels. This, again, is just to make sure that I'm hitting a certain volume range that I want to hit down here. A good comfortable range is within that yellow range. Just make sure that it's a bit lower than your microphone volume. The compression, go ahead and copy this compression settings again in the same side chain settings. We're going to side chain it against the microphone yet again. And then the limiter for the browser audio is set to -15 decibels. So this is just a little bit quieter than the desktop audio and still just a little bit louder than the communication audio. The browser audio does come across a bit quieter for my stream because of the way I have it set up. It usually hits around -18 decibels or so, which is right where I want it. And then with the side chain, if I talk or speak, it will drop down to, -20, -21 decibels or so. And then last but not least, the filters on our microphone. Make sure you set a limiter. I set mine to -10. Feel free to go all the way to -6 decibels. I wouldn't go past -6 decibels. And then last but not least, I also have a gain filter just in case I want to adjust the volume. Just use this as a volume adjustment. Don't use the slider down here as a volume adjuster. I hope you can see why now we separate all the audio sources the way we do in Voicemeeter and in OBS. It just gives you more control as a streamer. What you might notice is if you adjust the volume levels in Voicemeeter, it doesn't affect what's going through on stream. So if you don't want to listen to music, you can crank down that music volume for yourself, but it will still play through the stream, which is a very useful tool. Consider looking more into that as well. And then also with OBS, you just have more control on perfecting each one of the audio sources on your stream. It's like you have a real audio, it's like you really have a real analog mixer. I mean, what can I say? I hope you really enjoy that aspect of it. It's a really great way to perfect that audio quality for your stream. Audio source, Voicemeeter, audio, Voicemeeter. You finally made it through this extremely long video. I'm sure you're brain fried and you need to go to sleep or do something, because that was a lot of information. If you did like the video, do me a solid, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This is a lot of useful content, so I would appreciate the sub. If you still need help setting some of this stuff up, we offer free help in my Discord server. Link is in the description below. Also, guys, if you are interested in supporting me as a content creator, I actually today created a Patreon page. If you would just do me a solid, check out that Patreon page, patreon.com/thefrancois. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, so check me out there as well. That was a lot. Man, I'm brain fried myself. I've made this entire video in one sitting. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Man, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to perfect your streams more and just more. I just can't wait. It's dope. Not to say.